Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. So, what have I been doing? I'm pretty excited about the book I've been working on, which is called The Politics of Heaven. And the necessity of it is really to kind of encompass where we are in this modern time and to kind of explain, I think, in a way that hasn't been done before. If it wasn't something that was unique, it wouldn't be worth doing. So it's a project that I've taken on that I knew it was going to be a big one, a big project, a lot of research. There's two things I like doing more than anything in the world, and that's writing and then reading. And there's a whole lot of other things I like to do as well, but if I can do those things, I'm a pretty happy person. And what provoked my attention to this topic was a lot of modern questions that people have about sacrifice, the consumption of blood, cannibalism, and when we talk about that, there's lots of thoughts about secret societies and Hollywood cultures that are involved in consuming the blood of young people, like a vampire kind of thing, in order to stay young and beautiful, and what kind of deals are made out there. Of course, there's the Aleister Crowley cult, the Golden Dawn for people. There's Scientology. There's Islam against the Christian world. There's the Jewish people wanting to rebuild the temple so they can get back in the cycle of sacrifice to Yahweh and feed God blood of slain goats and heifers and all kinds of things in order to drive this feeding of the gods and appealing to the spirit world, a way to interact with them and have a relationship. That's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of modern assumptions that make people very afraid. And I've often talked about the Library of Alexandria when it was burnt down in the early BCs under a lot of violent conditions. And I always find that certain periods of time are quite relevant to what we assume today. And I think this period here is really important. Of course, in the Bible, you have the New Testament. The New Testament comes along much later and in historical settings. But here, at 397 BC, it's essentially the end of the Old Testament. This is a chart I have, I really enjoy. It has early, basically the known history of the written world. And here, in this part of the timeline, 397 BC, we have the end of the Old Testament. Here you have the Alexandria Library. So a lot of the books that would have been in the Alexandria Library, obviously Old Testament books would have been in there. I think the Dead Sea Scrolls gives us a hint of the kind of writing that took place at the time. But this gap here between 397 and 284 BC, that's the Greek period, and then their decline, and then the rise of the Romans, who essentially capstoned their culture and adopted a lot of the practices and then made the Roman Empire. And then that's this library was burnt, and a lot of knowledge of the period was completely eradicated. And we live in a time where, when you look at things from a strictly biblical point of view and say the Bible is history, it's what we know of history, it's our reference point. That's fine for a perspective of that narrative, but then you have cultures all over the world, from Japan to pre-European societies, dates and times under dispute of how long or how recent things might have been. You have a lot of assumptions that come up, and they need answers, and in the vacuum of answers, people kind of fill in their own blanks. And that leads to conspiracies and anxiety and all kinds of fears. So I've taken to write a book that deals with all those elements in a way that is unique. And because of my love of reading and a lot of really intense life experiences, I think there's something that I have unique to say about all those things. So I've been working on it for a little bit now, and I thought originally it'd probably take me 2 or 3 years, and I still might hold that timeline. I mean, it won't take me much longer to finish it. I'm on chapters 13 and 14 now. First draft. I mean, I'll go through some reconfigurations and adjust things accordingly and tighten up the narrative, maybe expand in some areas. But it's turned out really well, and I'm really excited about it. It's been a good project to be involved in, and I find that the research I've done over a long period of time is coming together in a uniquely cohesive way. And so I've been getting input and seeking, kind of get a baseline on where it's headed. And I'm going to provide on my blog site, Overman Warriors Wisdom, and you can look it up. There's only one place out there on the internet that's Overman Warrior specific. It's me. So look up Overman Warrior, Overman Warriors Wisdom, and you'll find it. I'm going to put on there some pre-analysis of chapter 13 and 14 that I thought came out very unique, and for me, kind of where I want it to be. Not that I get too haughty. I look at every contribution throughout history that was done with diligence. You take it in its own way. I don't aspire to be anything other than my own authentic self. And but you do wonder how it stacks up to other works that are out there. And one work that keeps coming up when I get some analysis inquiries into my book, The Politics of Heaven, is this one. St. Augustine's City of God. I really like this book. It was written 1400s, I think. In reference to the period that I showed, there's this gap between the fall off of Old Testament contributions and then New Testament contributions after Jesus was crucified and the disciples started doing their work. And then by 100 AD, you start having flow of information towards a Christian context of a New Testament contribution. And then this is written in the 1400s to kind of explain that Christianity didn't destroy Rome, it actually helped, and make a case for Christianity and its rise in the wake of the crucifixion 300 some years later. So you have a very interesting 700 year period where the Essenes came up to record the Dead Sea Scrolls. Prior to that, you had the Essenes beginning with what a lot of people don't know about. It's the teacher of righteousness and the rebellion against the institutionalized Jewish faith at the temple. And then, of course, the Greeks were doing what they were doing as far as analysis and mythology, and Rome rose to power and gained a lot of foothold in the world, really in the wake of Alexander the Great's empire. And you had all this chronicled in a library at Alexandria that was burnt down out of an act of really one age trying to step over another and destroy its previous relevance. And we see a lot of that going on today in modern religious practices. And so it's all very relevant and it's worth studying and understanding. So I've always been a fan of this book because it kind of fills a void and explains why it needed to happen and Christianity was good in the world. And this is the book that keeps coming up in reference to all books that are out there in the world, that my scope and ambition for the politics of heaven most embodies. So I'm having a lot of fun writing it. I think it's going to be a fun book to go out, and I don't have publishers connected to it yet or any of the distribution channels lined up. I'm just working on the project and sitting down and writing a book like writers always have written books. It's one of those solitary things where you take your life experiences and all the things you know and learn and just sort of put them down and see where it takes you. And I'm really happy with where the politics of heaven is going. And I'm very encouraged that that the comparison to what I'm doing comes back at works like that one, City of God. Another one is Milton's Paradise Lost. Lofty ambitions that come up. Another one has been Finnegan's Wake. Not in the way that Finnegan's Wake is very difficult to read, but in the way that it's densely packed with multi-layered meaning and the context of a very large story that you're telling. And what could be bigger than trying to tell the story of what the politics of heaven is? Are demons and angels, Republicans and Democrats? Is God a Republican? How do values transpire and play out in heavenly scope? And a couple of issues where that mandates some sort of definition is in the Book of Enoch, apocrypha text that was found with Dead Sea Scrolls. And a lot of debate over whether it should be in the Old Testament or not. Book of Enoch is interesting. He's a great-grandfather of Noah, and it talks about the fallen angels and the Nephilim, and the rebellion of 20 leaders who decided to conspire against God and take human wives for their own relationships. And what was born from them were the giants. And I've talked about the giants a lot. If you go all over the mounds of the Miami Valley in Ohio or anywhere in the world where there's giants, but specifically in North America, Indian mounds that were previously thought to be burial in nature, when you dig into them, you find there's reports from the 1800s, up to recent times, but mainly at that adventure period, pre-anthropology, institutionalism, and archaeology, where the scientific method started getting sort of early wokeisms put into it for funding mechanisms. There was a lot of large bones found in them. And so the question has always been, well, where do these bones come from? And then the Bible, of course, talks about giants a lot. And a lot of people want to say it's a metaphor, that when they talk about giants, they're talking about lofty previous civilizations, the land of Canaan, and why God wanted the Jewish people to conquer that land and take it. Well, all the way up through the line of David, there were lineages of giants. It wasn't just Goliath, but he had a whole family. And through the course of David coming to power as the favored son, the favored king of Israel, on the wake of King Saul's failures, you had giants in the land still being destroyed, factions that lived in the mountains that were everywhere. And where those giants come from, well, in the Book of Enoch, they say it came from a bunch of fallen angels that came out of heaven. 20 of them, they're named, and they conspired to have children with human women, and the offspring of those were the giants. And those were the offspring of the land of Canaan that Yahweh wanted to have destroyed. And it's a very interesting story, and we'd like to know more about who are these fallen angels, demons, devils, Satans. Why would they conspire against God if heaven is paradise? And then it goes back to the original sin. Why was Adam so disgraced in that his woman Eve was tempted to eat fruit from the forbidden tree, and why it was a serpent that did it. Because when you look back on pre-civilizations, pre-biblical civilizations, even though a lot of fundamentalists would argue that you can't get yourself all murked up in timelines. We know when you compare Japanese cultures and Mesoamerican cultures, the Mayans, of course, that they have dates that are going back into the BCs, about the same time as Solomon's first temple. You have a global culture that worshipped astrology and serpents specifically, including Serpent Mound in Ohio, turning out to be one of the biggest mysteries on the face of the earth, Serpent Mound in Ohio. And somehow all that has to come together into a cohesive understanding of the story. And the fall in the Garden of Eden is one of those, what's the sin and why do people have to die for it, and how do we define that, and why was God so upset? It's one thing to say that he is, and he just was the creator of the universe, and just accept those facts. But then when you start getting all these corresponding extra biblical texts that were written at the same time period, written in the vacuum of the period I just explained, what does all that mean, and what should we take from it, and how do we build our future around it? And that's the scope of the book. And so I've explained it to a few people a couple times during the holiday season, going from 2025 into 2026. And to clarify it for everybody who's kind of scratching their heads after it, because it's a big topic, and by the time you start discussing it a little bit, you end up with an hour or two behind you. It's actually far more complicated and layered than that. The premise of the question is, why do people on earth feel they have to sacrifice something that bleeds blood for the consumption of a spirit world contact? And I say that because even right now, a lot of the tension in the world between Hamas, Islam, taking control of the temple, and then the Jewish people wanting to rebuild it for the third time because they want to get back into the sacrifice cycle, essentially. They have the red heifers already picked, 2 of them, ready to go as soon as they push the Islam off the mount, and so they can rebuild the temple for the third time. And the purpose is to get back in the sacrifice cycle. And then, of course, the core of that is Christianity, where the temple became Jesus. And the sacrificial cycle was broken. The sins of Adam were rectified. And now we're denying all these evil beings who have been conspiring for all recorded history and then some, to consume blood, to feed off the anxieties of the human race, and to insist on sacrifices wherever they can get them. And then for Jesus to come along and say, I'm the only one. I offer myself as a sacrificial lamb to save the sins of the world, and you don't need to sacrifice anymore. You don't need to sacrifice your firstborn to Baal or to Ashtoreth or Ishtar or Marduk, Moloch. You just have to come through me, and I'll take all that off your hands, and everybody will live happily ever after, and we can resume paradise on earth with the forgiveness of sins. Some big lofty statements in there that have definite correlations into our modern politics, and the meaning of that to each and every person who has a lot of questions and how to navigate that complex world and have a better understanding of history and their place in it is a lofty topic that I'm enjoying exploring a lot, and I'm happy with the results. And I think I'll be able to finish up the actual text in 2026, and then I'll start cleaning it up and looking for avenues for it. It's probably going to be on a bigger scope than I had originally planned, because it's turning out better than I thought. And a sample of that I will provide on this early analysis of chapters 13 and 14. I think it will let everybody know why I've been a little bit more aloof than usual, and more bookwormish than I normally am, and why this project has become something that I feel a lot of passion for and I'm spending a lot of time on, and it's been worth it. So I'll share a little bit with that so everybody can understand. Anyway, I'm looking forward to finishing up the politics of heaven and presenting it in a way that will inspire debate. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, wrote several of them, but the most recent one is The Gunfighter's Guide to Business. I think you'll love it. And anyway, back to working on some cool projects like the politics of heaven, and have a good day.